Good Sunday morning, Northeast Ohio, and a very happy President's Day weekend to all. The race to become the next president is, of course, well underway. And while the Ohio primary may still be 30 days from today, the first votes in that race will be cast in just 3 days, Wednesday. That's when the first absentee ballots will be mailed out and when you can go to your local Board of Elections and vote early in person. Hours starting Wednesday will be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays through March 6, with expanded hours after that. And based on what we've seen over the last 2 weeks, the race should still be going strong by the time we get to Ohio. A year ago this week, Pete Buttigieg was speaking at a library in Parma, the mayor of a similarly sized town in Indiana, considering a run for the White House with a name few people could get right.
Proper pronunciation of the name, Pete.
On this Sunday, he finds himself coming off 2 strong showings in New Hampshire and Iowa, giving him an early lead in the delegate count for the Democratic nomination. Bernie Sanders was the narrow winner of the night in New Hampshire, but Buttigieg and Senator Amy Klobuchar surged in the Granite State at the expense of Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden.
I think they need to retool their messages in a way that generates some excitement.
News 5 political analyst Dr. Tom Sutton says Warren is being squeezed out of the progressive lane by Bernie Sanders, while Biden is banking on his early minority support in Nevada and South Carolina.
The big question is, will those voters of color, African Americans in South Carolina, Latinos in Nevada, continue to be reliable sources of support, or are they starting to look at, well, given what he's done, maybe we need to take a second look at some of these other candidates?
Setting the stage for Super Tuesday in less than 3 weeks, with a third of the delegates at stake, that could further mess things up.
The magic number I think everybody needs to focus on is 1,991, which is the delegates you need to win on the first ballot victory. It looks more and more likely that no one's going to get to that number because of how divided the race is. And then when you arrive at Super Tuesday, the billionaire is sitting there spending lots and lots of money. Mike Bloomberg sitting there spending lots and lots of money, looking like he could get a cache of delegates on that day.
And remember, if you're not registered to vote in the March primary, Tuesday is the last day to do so. Tuesday is also the last day that Bishop Nelson Perez will wake up as head of the Cleveland Catholic Diocese. Later that afternoon, he will be installed as the 10th Archbishop of Philadelphia. Before he left town on Friday, we had a chance to sit down. For Cleveland Bishop Nelson Perez, the past 3 weeks have been a blur. On the day after being introduced as the 10th Archbishop of Philadelphia, he traveled with the man he's replacing to the shrine of one of their predecessors, the 4th Bishop of Philadelphia and the first American male saint, St. John Newman. It was there, he says, it hit him.
Is this even for real, that I'm sitting next to really a hero and a giant of the Catholic Church in the United States, Archbishop Chaput, and before the 4th Bishop of Philadelphia, Saint, and now I'm heading in line with them to be a successor of them. Really kind of blows my mind. I try not to think of that, but it was an awesome moment that I says, oh my God, is this really happening?
For Bishop Perez, going to Philadelphia is a homecoming. It's where he became a priest and a pastor. But leaving Cleveland, he said, won't be easy.
Because Cleveland has been wonderful for me. The people of Cleveland, they're faith-filled, they're joyful, they embrace me, they love me, I love them back. I fell in love with the people of Cleveland, and I owe the people of Cleveland a debt because they taught me how to be a diocesan bishop. They taught me how to be shepherd of diocese.
The 58-year-old Perez is the youngest Archbishop of Philadelphia in nearly 60 years, prompting some to call his selection a legacy pick for Pope Francis. All the Archbishop designate knows is this all came as a surprise.
I really don't know why the Holy Father named me for Philadelphia, to be honest with you. They don't tell you. You just get a call and you get told that the Holy Father is requesting this of you, and in obedience you accept it.
And because of his age and the position that he is assuming, don't be surprised to eventually see Pope Francis elevate Archbishop Perez to Cardinal. Well, tomorrow we celebrate President's Day here in the United States, and no state in the Union arguably has more reason to celebrate than Ohio. We lay claim to 8 U.S. presidents, and in keeping with tradition on this Sunday morning, we take a moment to look back on that rich history, beginning with this handsome fellow. William Henry Harrison, who moved to Ohio from Virginia, was the Buckeye State's first claim to the presidency in 1841. This is an actual copy of his inaugural address. It was 8,445 words long, and that was after it was edited. Never would have made it on Twitter. It was the longest inaugural address in presidential history, and as a result, his presidency was the shortest in history. You see, it was delivered in a cold March rain. He got sick. A month of the day later, he died. He was the first U.S. president to die in office. Spoiler alert, over the next 82 years, Ohio would lay claim to 8 U.S. presidents. Half of them would die in office. Ulysses S. Grant was not one of them. He took the oath of office in 1869 as the 18th president. Presidents 19 and 20, also Ohioans. Rutherford B. Hayes lost the popular vote but won the electoral vote. Sounds familiar. Make America's 38 states great again, though, was not his slogan in 1876. He was followed by James Garfield, who we know by his Lakeview Cemetery memorial, also died in office, his demise coming at the hands of an assassin in 1881. Next up, Benjamin Harrison, grandson of William Henry. Harrison kept his inaugural address shorter than his grandfather's, and as a result lived out his entire term as the 23rd president. William McKinley was the next Ohioan to hold the office. He survived the re-election challenge, only to be gunned down months later in Buffalo at the start of his second term as the 25th president. He's buried in Canton. Snow 10 inches a day, Ohioan William Taft was sworn in. Taft later becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, so he's the only man to ever take and administer the presidential oath, which he did with Calvin Coolidge. And hard-living Warren Harding was the last Ohioan to call 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue home, but just like Harrison, Garfield, and McKinley before him, it would be his final home, dying of a heart attack in his third year in office. And despite the best efforts of names like Taft, Glenn, Kosich, and Kosich, no Ohioan has held the post since. With Democracy 2020, I'm John Kosich. Enjoy your Sunday.